What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the headlines when it comes to this war in the Middle East. Okay, so Fox News headline, Iranian shadow militias target U.S., Israel, and Middle East reports. NBC is reporting at least 45 service members may have been injured in Iran-linked attacks. Reuters is reporting Iran says U.S. will be hit hard if no ceasefire in Gaza. Vox headline here, Iran could determine how far the Israeli-Hamas war spreads. News Nation is reporting senators to introduce resolution to strike Iran if Hezbollah attacks Israel. So those are just a few of the headlines that we've seen today. So there's a lot going on, and there's always that fear that the U.S., that we might get involved in this war because of all the different things that we're seeing here. And we're seeing pushback from Iran saying that we'll be hit hard. We're also seeing the U.S. senators creating a resolution to go after Iran, to start a war with Iran if Hezbollah continues to send missiles. So we're going to watch a couple of clips and we're going to talk a little bit about it. Then I'm also going to show you this map and show you exactly what's going on when it comes to this war in the Middle East. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification, and then click all. By clicking all, you'll get notified anytime we post a video. We do daily videos here, so by clicking the bell notification and clicking all, you should be getting updated every day. And just a reminder, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter and Threads, you can at the TEC Show Live. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few clips. The first clip that I'm going to show you is the talk of the U.S. military that have been wounded. So it's 45 now that have been wounded by Iranian-backed, and they're calling it Iranian-backed militias. Okay, so this is not Iran that's attacking us directly. These are militia groups that are sponsored or said to be sponsored by Iran. So I'll play this clip, then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
And we have more new developments in the region this morning. U.S. officials tell NBC News that recent attacks by Iranian-backed militias have injured at least 45 Americans on bases in Iraq and Syria.
Their pace increasing with 10 attacks just since Thursday, bringing the total number to at least 38 attacks since October 17th.
For more, we're joined by NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. Courtney, good morning. So what else are you hearing from U.S. officials about these attacks? And what can you tell us about those injured Americans?
So fortunately, the majority of these attacks have been unsuccessful in that they have not caused injuries, damage to infrastructure, or deaths of any Americans. But there have been, as you mentioned now, at least 45 U.S. service members who've suffered minor injuries. Now, the reason that that number jumped so much since about this time last week is because of the number of service members who've come forward with potential traumatic brain injury. That is something, it's an ailment that has a very wide range of symptoms from pretty mild to extremely severe. And it's something that doctors will have to monitor these people for months, if not longer, to see whether they actually have traumatic brain injury or TBI. But that's why the number is now up to 45. But what we also learned yesterday, Savannah, is that there have now been 4 attacks, not just the 2 we were aware of, but 4 that have led to U.S. injuries. Now, these 38 minimum now of 38 attacks, because the reality is we hear about more every few hours. They have been carried out for the most part by one-way attack drones. There have been some mortars, some indirect fire. But for the most part, most of those munitions, whether it's a drone or a rocket or a mortar, most of them have not reached the bases, or they've been shot down by the base defense system. Savannah.
So, Courtney, I mean, we talked to you just over a week ago about attacks on bases in Iraq and Syria. Since then, there have been at least 15 more attacks. How is the U.S. responding?
Yeah, so we saw that one series of airstrikes that the U.S. conducted about 10 days ago now. In northeastern Syria, they hit some ammunition weapons depots or facilities. We haven't seen any response since then, although U.S. officials do say that they reserve the right to continue these sorts of what they call retaliatory strikes. The goal with these sorts of airstrikes is to cut off the flow of supplies so that these groups can't carry out more attacks against bases with Americans on them. Now, I will say, in the past, back in March, actually, of this year, the U.S. carried out a series of strikes when there were attacks like these, and it was successful. We went for months, frankly, from March until October 17th, with really no attacks against bases with Americans there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of those sorts of strikes. Again, the goal is to deter. But it's important to point out that the U.S. is also doing this in what they see as a proportional manner. So they're striking facilities as opposed to to people. Joe and Savannah.
Courtney, as we mentioned, U.S. officials believe these attacks are linked to Iran. What does that tell us about how or why these attacks are being carried out?
Yeah, that's right. So those facilities that they hit a week and a half or so ago now, officials were telling us at the time that they had direct links to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. That's the group who is believed to be supplying, equipping, training, and funding, in many cases, some of these militia groups in Iraq and Syria that are carrying out these attacks. And in fact, the U.S., while they're not saying that they have any intelligence or evidence that Iran sort of greenlit this uptick in attacks, they are calling on the Iranian regime, Iranian leaders, to tell these militia groups to stop, which of course indicates that the U.S. believe that Iran has some sort of sway or power over these groups to make them start or stop these sorts of attacks. Officials, though, continue to say that there is no direct link between this uptick in attacks, now 38 of them in the last several weeks. They're saying there's no uptick in these attacks and direct link to Israel and Gaza. But the reality, guys, is this is not happening in a vacuum. We had not seen these sorts of attacks on bases in months. They ticked up on October 17th after the war in Israel and Gaza started, after the October 7th attacks. The reality is here, there has to be a link between the two.
Okay, so you see there 38 attacks in the last couple of weeks on U.S. soldiers. I mean, it's probably going to continue to increase. Now, we have a bipartisan group of senators that have sponsored a resolution to go to war with Iran if Hezbollah attacks Israel. And so this is getting very concerning. Now, the real concerning part about this is Hezbollah, or at least Hezbollah-backed militias, have already attacked Israel. And so if this resolution goes through, if it passes the Senate and passes the House and goes to the president and he signs off on it, then we could be going to war with Iran because of this resolution. So let me show you this clip here.
We begin tonight with the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. Concern is high that the conflict will expand. Here in the U.S., a new aggressive proposal. A bipartisan group of senators are now introducing a resolution that would authorize a U.S. strike against Iran if Hezbollah attacks Israel. In response to the threats from Hezbollah, the U.S. State Department issuing a travel warning on Lebanon, urging any American citizens there to leave as soon as possible, citing a, quote, unpredictable security situation. All of this happening as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made his diplomatic push in the Middle East, traveling to the West Bank, meeting with the Palestinian president, reiterating the Biden administration's efforts to bring much-needed aid into Gaza. News Nation's Emily Finn joins us live. And Emily, what do we know about this bipartisan resolution in Congress that would authorize a U.S. strike on Iran?
That's right, Natasha. We'll have more details on this resolution tomorrow. U.S. senators are seeking approval to launch a military strike against Iran if Hezbollah attacks Israel and opens up a second front in the war in a major way. Hezbollah is Iran's largest proxy organization in the region and a designated terror group by the U.S. But the scary part here, the first shots between Hezbollah and Israel have already been fired.
It was very important to send a very clear message to anyone who might seek to take advantage of the conflict in Gaza to threaten our personnel here or anywhere else in the region. Don't do it.
Today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. Abbas reportedly told Blinken that he wanted an immediate ceasefire, but Blinken instead pushed for a so-called humanitarian pause, allowing aid like food, water, and medical supplies to enter Gaza. Israel has rejected any pause, demanding Hamas release the more than 200 hostages taken during the October 7th attacks.
It's important that as we're engaged in pursuing humanitarian pause, this can be something that advances the prospect of getting the hostages back. It can also advance other things that we're committed to doing, as is the government of Israel and other partners in the region, especially getting more humanitarian assistance to people who need it in Gaza.
Back home in Washington, a bipartisan group of senators are prepared to introduce a new resolution this week, recommending the U.S. military launch strikes against Iran if Hezbollah, the country's largest proxy in the region and designated terrorist organization by the U.S., attacks Israel. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal say they hope the resolution sends a clear message to Iran.
The resolution puts Iran on notice that all this military force in the region will be coming after you if you expand this war by activating Hezbollah or killing an American through proxies in Syria and Iraq. And they need to hear that. They need to believe that.
On Friday, Hezbollah's leader made a speech for the first time since the war began, vowing to step up military pressure on Israel, putting all options on the table, saying we can resort to them at any time. On Saturday, Israeli warplanes conducted airstrikes along the border with Lebanon as the militant Hezbollah group attacked several Israeli army posts, including one that was struck with 2 large rockets.
We're working very hard to make sure that the conflict in Gaza does not escalate, does not spread to other places, whether it's here, whether it's elsewhere in the region.
The U.S. has significantly ramped up our own military presence in the region, with thousands of troops at the ready if the conflict does escalate, Natasha.
All right, Emily Finn, thank you.
Okay, so you see, U.S. senators are preparing this resolution, and they'll probably pass it this week, and then it will go to the House, and we'll see what the House does with it. They'll most likely pass it and send it to the president. So I want to take a look at the map here in Gaza and Israel, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on over there. This is critical threats. This is where I got it, criticalthreats.org. So if you want to get the information, you can get it from there. And they pretty much give you a daily update when it comes to what's going on over there in the Middle East. Okay, so it says right here, Israeli forces enter the northern outskirts of Al-Shati refugee camp. And so this area here, and you know, they're on the ground now. So they're fighting on the ground. We already have that information. Now, Lebanon, this is what's important, because in Lebanon, just on that border there, Israel and Lebanon, we're seeing unspecified militants conducting 5 cross-border attacks on Israeli military and civilian targets in northern Israel. So this is what everyone has their eye on, because this is where the war could broaden, okay, it can widen. And this is where the U.S. is saying, look, we don't want an expanded war and a war on 2 fronts for Israel. And so both the U.S. and Israel were trying to keep that from happening, because if that happens, then that's when the U.S. might have to get involved. Okay, so let's look what's going on in the West Bank here. Palestinian militants continue clashing with Israeli forces at the usual rate. So they're saying the usual rate in West Bank. So no real uptick in the West Bank as of right now. And then here, the Islamic resistance in Iraq continues to claim drone and rocket attacks on multiple U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. So we know that's going on up in this region here. And so hopefully that gives you an illustration of what's going on over in Gaza and in Israel. So right now, the U.S., we're on guard. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And we don't want to go to war, but it looks like we're getting dragged into this whole conflict, because every day we're seeing more and more attacks on U.S. Soldiers. And so when will the U.S. military go in and say enough is enough? We've already seen 2 airstrikes by the U.S. military. Will we see more in the future? I want to know what you guys think about all this down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.